Our second research question is what socioeconomic, cultural, and political contexts frame this issue? We talked about the more tangible, shark-focused ways to describe this problem, and we're shifting now toward our socioeconomic and political contexts. There were three overarching themes that emerged from interviews to help me understand context for this issue. The first was denial of Fishers' experiences. So people talked about Fishers lacking opportunity to share their perspectives, or other stakeholders dismissing their knowledge. The second is marginalization. People talked about feeling like they weren't being prioritized, sometimes because of the territorial status of Guam and the CNMI, but also in terms of occupying smaller outer islands, or just generally in terms of being a fisher. And the third is economic hardship. Then there were several themes that came up a lot with overarching themes: data validity, stakeholder disconnect, mistrust, and then the remaining four: access to data, influence in management and research, livelihood security, and financial capital, are different types of power that can be wielded by stakeholders. The next few slides will focus on some key examples to illustrate how context on the left and themes on the right are connected. If you want to skip to an overview of socioeconomic context, you can navigate to the second half of this video. These two quotes illustrate disconnects between the experience and knowledge of fishers and scientists. They describe barriers to bridging that disconnect. So the quote on the left talks about mistrust, and both of these quotes acknowledge that the observations made by fishers and scientists are very different and not really being reconciled. These examples connect data validity, stakeholder disconnect, and mistrust to denying fishers' experiences. This person described his friend not wanting to participate in this project because, maybe we're here to safeguard our positions. The interviewee noted that he has seen this dynamic when other researchers have visited to do their work, so there is this mistrust between fishers and researchers based on past experiences. This example is also related to data access because fishers can decide whether or not to facilitate researchers' data collection. And it acknowledges the advantages that researchers have in the stability of their livelihoods as compared to the fishers they rely on to do their work, who may experience financial risk very differently. Moving on to territorial marginalization and economic hardship, this person described being physically removed from the mainland U.S. and not being allocated funds because of their status as a territory. As those in the government make decisions about management and research, they exercise a certain kind of power, and this person felt that the territories aren't recognized in the same way as states. And this last example connects economic hardship to fisheries participation, which is related to fisher livelihoods. He noted that shark research needed to be done now to find solutions or provide aid before participation declines further. I highlighted stakeholder disconnect here because this illustrates the differences in impact and urgency for different stakeholder groups. The key messages I want to convey are that different stakeholders wield different kinds of power in defining the shark problem, and also mistrust and past experiences between stakeholders may create barriers to collaboration. Before we wrap up, I'll elaborate a bit on how we situate shark interactions within economic context, and I'll also touch a bit on social context as well. So we have our fisher who invests in materials to get out on the water. If our fisher is lucky, he or she lands a fish, and that fish can be sold on the market, or it can be consumed at home, shared with friends, family, community members, and some gain is returned to the fisher, whether that's monetary, maybe they partake in the catch themselves, strengthen social ties in the community, or engage in bartering and receive some kind of good in exchange for the fish. But the costs of fishing are increasing through time, both price and the quantity being expended to sustain fishing practice. And people are fishing further to adapt to changing fish populations and distribution. They're spending more on fuel and investing in different gear, or in this example, giving up on commercial fishing for other more stable occupations. People also talked about the cost of local fishing supplies being relatively high, given the limited number of local tackle stores. If fishers take their catch to market, they compete with others to offload. They also compete with imported seafood for things that aren't available year-round or found locally at all. People also talked about the price of fish being low and not changing much through time despite the increasing costs of fishing. And they talked about the price of fish remaining low, in many cases regardless of availability. availability or supply, even the quality of fish that they deliver. So this complicates monetary returns to the fisher, whether he or she is trying to recover expenses or make a living. And the dynamics of community are layered onto economic context as well. So one fisher in the CNMI said, "If we charge more money, it's like highway robbery." This person said it feels like cheating your neighbors, and if the market gets expensive, people just come to your door and ask you for fish directly. So it puts fishers in a challenging spot financially. And then if we add shark interactions to this mix, with its impacts to fishing gear and equipment, the distance people go to fish, and the taking of catch directly, it exacerbates the fisher's challenges. Given all of these different pressures, people describe shifts in the community away from fishing livelihoods toward more stable occupations. They talked also about being less willing to gamble on a fishing trip, maybe on any given day deciding against fishing, and relying instead on what their friends might bring in. And what I thought was interesting is that regardless of individuals' decisions to continue to fish, if they have historically provided seafood to their community, they still kind of have that obligation to fulfill socially. All this to say that shark interactions occur within larger socioeconomic contexts that can put fishers in a pretty challenging position. I'll leave you with a summary of our shark problem universe. I won't review it with you, but you can come back to this visual to review key themes from results videos 1 and 2. These are key takeaways from this video, and in the next video we'll address research question 3, what are some options to address these problems?